Okay, so chances are if you were watching this video, then you probably have a Canon camera sitting in a drawer somewhere, and you may be looking to take some really good and really cinematic looking video clips without having to spend a dime. And if you're in that exact situation, I have the perfect solution for you, and that is to use the firmware hack called Magic Lantern, which basically increases the functionality of your camera. Now I just have to clarify one thing: Magic Lantern isn't actually a hack. It's more like an extension to the original firmware, as it sits and runs on the SD card that you put it on. So first I'm going to show you how to install it, and then I'm going to go into the technical aspects of it. So first, go to the official website and then find your camera model and download the nightly build. So you need to make sure that your camera's on the right firmware first before you install Magic Lantern on it. And then what you're going to want to do is unzip the folder and then transfer the files inside of that folder to the SD card that you're going to put in the camera. And then you're going to put the SD card into the camera, turn the dial at the top to the program option, then go into the settings and find the option to update the firmware. And then restart the camera, and if all goes well, then you should be able to use Magic Lantern. Now this works 99.9% of the time, but in that very rare case where it breaks your camera, I am not responsible for your actions, so yeah, do keep that in mind. Now this camera is the Canon Rebel T3i, which is one of the Digic 4 cameras. But there is more Magic Lantern development on the Digic 5 cameras, such as the T4i, T5i, and the EOS M, and a lot more. Now those cameras are also getting more features, such as crop mode, which allows you to record in bin resolutions, basically meaning that you can record at a lower resolution than the final output, which does have its advantages, and also SD overclocking, which allows you to overclock the SD card controller inside of the camera so that you can write to the card faster. Now to get into what raw video is, first we need to get into what a normal video is, one that you might take on a phone, for example. So say you take a video on an iPhone, that video data will come from the sensor and the data will be processed to look better, and it will be saved to a lossy video format such as H.264 to save space. Now raw video is a lossless format that does not process the image after it is taken. It just takes the data from the sensor and saves it onto the SD card, where the file can then be interpreted by the program you open it with. This format takes up a lot more storage space because it is a lossless format and it doesn't compress the file at all. But because there is no extra image processing, the end result can have that film look. You know, nowadays with so many videos being filmed on these phones that over-process the image a lot, seeing a video with that film look can seem more professional than videos without it. Even with lower resolutions, it would still look good on smaller screens because it still has those film colors. So now, let's get into continuous resolutions and higher resolutions. Now, a continuous resolution in Magic Lantern terms is a raw video resolution that you can record in for as long as you want. So you can record in this raw video resolution basically until your card completely fills up. Now your continuous resolution can only go so high. You can only record so many pixels onto the SD card every second, and this is mainly bottlenecked by the speed at which your camera writes to the SD card and the maximum resolution of your camera sensor. Now a high video resolution is a raw video resolution that you cannot record in for as long as you want, because the data rate of the video would exceed the write speed of the SD card. This would be fixed by either getting a faster SD card or by using the SD overclocking module I talked about earlier, which, as I said, only supports the Digic 5 platform, sadly. So now let's see all the raw video resolutions for the Canon Rebel T3i. Now with this camera, the highest continuous resolution that you can record in at 30 FPS with a 16:9 aspect ratio and 14-bit color is only 864x486, which is barely above 480p, and if you were to go any higher than that, then that would no longer be considered a continuous resolution. Now you can decrease the FPS. Now decreasing the FPS to the lowest acceptable real-time frame rate of 24 FPS allows you to increase the continuous resolution to 960x540, which is still a mere 1/4 of proper 1080p. Now the main goal is to try and get higher continuous resolutions. Now to do that, you can also decrease the color bit depth from 14-bit all the way down to 10-bit. Now to be able to do that, you're going to need this experimental build, which allows you to record 10 to 12-bit raw video. You lose a little bit of color information, but in return you are able to record with a higher continuous resolution of 1152x630. Now lowering the aspect ratio is another trick that you can use if you want to increase the horizontal resolution of your video while still filming with the same amount of pixels. Now sure, there's going to be black bars at the top and bottom, but more pixels are going to be reserved for the entire rest of the image, and plus, black bars at the top and the bottom is known for looking cinematic anyways. So the higher this first number is, the wider your image is going to be. So the most I'd ever go for my personal work is 2.35 to 1. Now the only way to get full 1080p raw video on this camera in particular is to go into the X5 zoom mode by pressing the plus button resolution, and then you can increase the resolution far beyond 1700, and then you can record at a far lower frame rate, such as like 7 frames per second, which is good for time lapses, but not good for really anything else. Like if you were to film an actual video in 7 frames per second, it would look absolutely terrible. So now let's get into the post-processing aspect of it, by converting the raw video clip to an actually usable file that you can use in your video editor. Now, converting the video using the MLV app is a process that you have to do if you plan on taking raw videos with Magic Lantern. It is way more tedious than just importing the file into the video editor, but it is a required step. You can color grade, configure, and export your video to a common format like H.264, AVI, or a whole lot of other formats. Now here are a couple of tips if you're ever experiencing issues. So if your video looks dark and green when you import it into the MLV app, expand raw correction and then select the repair button on the raw black level slider. The value should be either 127 or 128. So another tip is if your video has a lot of moire or moire or however you pronounce it, which are these horrible looking artifacts, then a good way to fix it is to turn up your chroma smooth from off to a higher value like 2x2 or 5x5. And you can just try to zoom into the video and see which option looks best. You also have the option to select many good debayer algorithms, and the default one is set to Amaze, but the one that I like to use to avoid these weird RGB artifacts is the IGV one, which does help to remove a bit of chromatic aberration artifacts in the video, and in my opinion actually looks a little bit better than the Amaze debayer algorithm. So now, let's look at the final output. So the video looks pretty good. The only thing is that the continuous resolution is really not very high even after doing all those tweaks I mentioned earlier. And I was filming at the continuous resolution for pretty much every clip. While I was filming that, I also was experimenting with the aspect ratio and just trying to find that sweet spot of clarity and wideness without having the aspect ratio look too jarring. So the finished video looks okay on a big monitor because of the lower resolution, but it would have looked even better if you're watching this on a phone with a smaller screen. So now let's get into the main issues that I'm having with Magic Lantern. So if you are filming raw video, it is possible to turn on audio recording in your video. For some reason though, on my camera, I can't seem to enable audio recording while recording raw video, and it might be a common problem. Like Magic Lantern says that the audio is disabled and you should enable it in the canon menu, even though in the canon menu the audio is enabled. Like it's kind of a weird glitch. Another common bug is if you're filming in raw, you might get something called pink frames, where for one frame your video would just glitch out. Now it's very rare that this would happen, and this is mainly caused by something not being configured correctly, such as your preview mode, or Magic Lantern is not very stable, and it can be very annoying, especially after you film something that you can only do one time. Now here's a little bit of a personal rant from me. So it would really be nice if they ported the SD overclocking feature meant for Digic 5 over to the Digic 4 cameras, but they can't because sadly there are not really enough people working on the firmware to update all supported camera models at a faster pace. There are some Digic 4 cameras out there that can write to the card at a higher speed, but those cameras usually use a different type of storage standard, such as a CFast card for example, which is a naturally faster storage medium. So the closest Digic 4 SD overclocking build I've seen after hours of research is this very experimental build for the 550D, and I've heard people say that it doesn't work. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that this video was really helpful for you in getting really nice videos out of your camera. If you loved the video, please subscribe, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. Bye!